Morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
How many of you are here? 13. Okay, we are 13 of you, so we'll start. Okay, today I'll be taking two classes continuously. I'll be taking the class up to 11:30. Okay, so I'll be taking investment. Sorry, not investment. I'll be taking tax class, and I'll be completing the first unit as far as theory is concerned. In my next class of taxation, we'll start with the problems. Okay, so today I will be taking two classes continuously of 40 minutes each, and I'll be
Sir,
covering
your
the
voice
first.
is low.
Yeah, just a minute. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll be taking two classes up to 11:30. I'll be taking tax and I'll be completing the first unit theory as far as unit number 1 is concerned. The problems part of it we'll take it in the next class. Okay. So and afternoon I will not be engaging any class. We have some exam duty, so I'll be available in the exam office. So afternoon I'm not going to take the class. Other classes will continue. I am not going to take the afternoon class. That's the reason I will be taking two classes continuously. Okay. So let us start from where we had stopped yesterday. We spoke yesterday specifically about two things. First was the residential status, and second, we also spoke about the incidence of tax. That means whenever we want to judge or whenever we want to make a person liable to pay tax, there are first condition that we have to check is we have to ascertain what is the residential status of that particular person. Once we know what is the residential status of that particular person, only then we need to understand if that particular person, if he's been declared depending on his residential status, if we declare him as a resident or not ordinary resident and a non-resident, depending on these three categories, we need to classify that particular person's income as to whether it is an Indian income or whether it is a foreign income. So we yesterday we saw a matrix wherein I had put on the horizontal line, I had put the residential status of a ordinary resident, not ordinary resident, and a non-resident. And on my vertical axis, I had put whether it is an Indian income or whether it's a foreign income. And depending on that particular quadrant, we used to assign whether that particular person is liable to pay tax in India or not. There were two special cases where we saw under foreign income, if that particular person is having business connection with India, then that particular income is that income becomes taxable in India, right? Yesterday I gave you an example of uh, a candidate having a manufacturing unit in Malaysia, manufactures furnitures there and sells the furniture there, but the business is controlled from India, which means there is a business connection with India, and that is the reason that particular income is liable to be taxed in India, and the person is liable to pay tax in India. So this is what we discussed. We moved on to understand what do you mean by deemed income and what do you mean by accrued income. Deemed income means the income that you have received in India, okay, and accrued income means that you are going to earn in India, right? So that is what we call as deemed in India and what we call as accrual India, or it has accumulated in India. So that is how we need to differentiate as far as Indian income and a foreign income. Now, based on those particular conditions, okay, we have classified or we have made this particular table that is available on your screen for you to understand as far as how should that particular income be treated and under what head is that income going to be liable to pay tax is what we discussed as far as yesterday's class is concerned. Clear? I just revised as to what happened yesterday. If you have any doubts till whatever we discussed yesterday, you can very well raise the doubts, or else we'll move with the next part. I'll just give a minute. Just think about it. If you have any doubts, else we'll move to the next part. Now, one more thing, before I start further, you can see on your slide, certain a particular table, and this table is going to continue to the next slide also. Whenever we are solving problems with respect to residential status, and we are also going to solve problem parallelly with incidence of income, this particular chart or this particular slide and the next slide is very useful for you when it comes to solving of problems. Okay, so keep this chart or keep this particular slide handy whenever we are solving problems, so that things would be easier for you to understand when we come to the problem part of it. Clear? So I'll just give you a minute. Please go through this particular slide and then we'll push on to the next slide. Okay, so just go through this. Okay, Tejaswini, Swapnil and Dhanashri, please mute your microphones. Okay, a third point might be a little bit confusing for you. Okay, it says income accruing, that means earned. Okay, income earned and received outside India from a business which is controlled from India or set up in India, then in such case, okay, in such case, the normal resident is anyways going to be taxed. The resident who is a not ordinary resident is also going to be taxed. I will give you the reference for this. The reference is case 1 as what we discussed yesterday. Is the business controlled from India? If you can see that the business is controlled from India, and that is the reason the resident as well as the resident but not ordinary resident are also liable to pay tax. The non-resident need not pay tax because anyway it is earned outside India, it is also received outside India, irrespective of from where the business is controlled. For the last category, that is non-resident, even if the business is controlled from India but the income is received outside India and earned outside India, that particular person is not liable to pay tax. Okay, so you need to understand all these micro points or the smaller points that are coming into picture. Fourth point says income is earned outside India, received outside India, but it is nothing to do with business or it is nothing to do with profession which is controlled from India. In such case, only the resident is liable to pay tax. The other two need not pay tax. So all these conditions are necessary for you to understand when it comes to solving of problems. Okay, so understand the theory very, very clearly, and then only you will be able to apply the same concepts to the problem. Okay, we'll move on to the next part. Now here it talks about foreign income, right? Now when it comes to foreign income, income from a business, okay, income from a business, it is a foreign income, no doubt. Income from a business which is controlled partly or fully from India, okay. Under the first two heads, it is going to be taxed in India. The last person will not be taxed in India. Why? Because anyway, it is a foreign income and that last person is a non-resident. So anyways, he will not be liable to pay tax. Next, if that foreign income is from a profession, okay, if it is a foreign income, if that income is from a profession and that profession is controlled from India, again, only the first two heads are liable to pay tax. The last one need not pay tax. Same gets continued for the third point. If the business is controlled from India, though it is received outside India, it is earned outside India, but if the business is controlled from India, only the first two heads are liable to pay tax. The last person need not pay tax on it. Clear? Next is for a profession. Okay, if the income is, if the person is receiving, earning income and receiving the income from a profession which is set up outside India. Look at the second last point. It says it is been set up from a location which is outside India, or it has been controlled not from India but from some other country. In such case, only the first person, that is the resident, normal resident, is going to be taxed. The other two are not going to be taxed at all. Okay, so you need to understand what is the source of income. Is it related to India? Is it earned in India? Is it received in India? If ask these questions to yourself, And if you get a satisfactory answer under that particular head, those particular income are liable to pay tax. Any doubts in this particular slide?
No, sir.
Okay, I would like to hear from others. Anyone has any doubts, please clarify, because as I said, this particular slide and the previous slide are necessary for you to understand and also to keep this as a reference when it comes to solving of problems. I would like to hear from other people. Any doubts
No,
as far as
sir.
this particular slide is concerned?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, sir.
Okay, okay.
No, no, sir.
Okay. So this is just an example that I have given you. Don't worry about the dates and other things. It is just an income. Okay. Let us see. On 10/5/2010, it's a very old income. 10/5/2010. Okay. You have received a rental income of 36,000 rupees, and this income is received in India. If you observe, we don't know from where the income is earned. Okay, we don't know from where the income is earned, but it is received in India. And since it is received in India, it becomes an Indian income, irrespective of what is your residential status. All these three people are liable to pay tax in India. You're getting it? Any doubts in this?
No, sir.
Okay,
No,
next.
sir.
On 31st/3/2011, interest income of 46,000 accrues in India may be received in or outside India. So here, where it is received is immaterial. You have earned it in India, right? You have earned this 46,000 rupees in the form of an interest, and you have earned it in India. So whatever might be your residential status, you still have to pay tax in India. That is what it says. Getting it? Next, on this particular day, income of 56,000 is deemed to be received in India, may accrue outside India. That means you have received the money of 56,000 rupees in India. You might have earned it outside India, right? Still, it is an Indian income because you have received in India. So whether you have received in India or whether you have earned in India, it is an Indian income. All are liable to pay tax. Next point, income of 66,000 deemed to accrue in India may be received outside India. Still, it becomes an Indian income. Last one is very important. Business income of 76,000 rupees is received and accrued outside India. Okay, business is not controlled from India. In such case, only the first person is liable to pay tax. The other two need not pay tax because it clearly says it is a business income, it is received outside India, it is earned outside India, and that particular business is not controlled from India. So naturally, only the first person is liable to pay tax. The other two need not pay any taxes. This is just an example, nothing to do with the problem, nothing to do with the years. What I'm trying to tell you here is, are you able to get the concept here? Who is liable to pay tax and who is not liable to pay tax? That is what is important for us. Clear? Okay, next one. Business income of 76, I think, business income of 76,000 rupees received and accrued outside India, but business is controlled from India. Remember the last slide, I told you that business is not controlled from India. In this particular slide, same problem, everything is same. The only word that is changed is that the business is controlled from India. And since the business is controlled from India, only the first two people are going to be taxed in India. The last person will not be taxed in India. Why? Because the business is controlled from India. This word is very important. Next one, interest income, or it could be rental income or salary income, whatever you can call it, of rupees 86,000 was received outside India. It accrues outside India. Okay, so it has nothing to do with business. Observe the word, there is no business here, no professional word is been used. It could be an interest income, it could be a rental income, it could be salary income. This income is received outside India and it is also earned outside India. So only the first person is liable to pay tax. The second person is not liable to be taxed. Second and third person need not pay tax. Next one, gift of rupees 2 lakh received outside India by an individual from a friend. Okay, now it is gift is, you cannot tell that I'll be giving you a gift and you give the gift at a later stage. So it's a gift is a gift, that means you have to give it on that spot. So here this gift of 2 lakh rupees is received and earned outside India. Okay, it is received also outside India, it is also earned outside India. So naturally it is not related to business. So in this particular case, only the first person is liable to pay tax. The second person need not pay the tax. Second and third person need not pay the tax. But if the gift of 1 lakh is received in Delhi by an individual from a friend, then the first two, in fact, all these people are liable to pay tax, because since it is received in Delhi, okay, that means it is received in India, and any income that is received in India is called as an Indian income. So naturally, all people are liable to pay tax. Okay, next one, income of 96,000 is earned and received outside India in 2004 and 5, but later on remitted to India. In such case, no one is liable to pay tax, because we are considering in this particular year, right? We are considering 2010, or we are considering 2010 and 11. So whatever income is earned in 10 and 11, only that income has to be considered. This income is pertaining to 2004 and 5. Though it is received outside India, though it is earned outside India, none of them are going to be liable to pay tax, because the year does not fall into the year that we have considered 10, 11. So it is not related to this particular year. So forget it. We are not going to consider. Only those incomes have to be considered which you have earned in the previous year. Incomes which you have not earned in the previous year will not form a part of your calculation, but the entry has to be mentioned. If you don't write this particular entry, your answer will still be correct, okay, but you will not get full marks, because the examiner will consider that you have ignored that particular entry. So instead of that, write that particular entry, and under all these three heads, put a dash sign, or put not applicable, or put no, whatever, which gives an indication to the examiner that you have considered the entry, you have understood the concept, and that is the reason you knew that these entries should not be considered, and that's the reason you have not entered the values. That is what we need to understand. Clear? So ignoring the entry, I do agree your answer will tally, but you will not get full marks. So do write the entry. If value should not come under that particular head, just put a dash, or put as NA, or put as no, then your answer gets tally. Any doubts in this?
No, sir.
Okay. Next, we are going to understand the concept of
Sir,
yes.
sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Sir, we calculate the income of all the residents, sir, and then we calculate the tax.
Yes.
Hello, so we calculate even the tax of their, no, sir. So for calculation of the tax, you told for individuals we have to take 4% as an education cess. Then, if we consider the companies or local authorities, cooperatives, then you have told that the education cess is 3%. But education cess is the same for everything, no, sir. It should be 4%.
Yeah. As I said, the ruling is yet to come out, but it is going to be 4% across.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Remember, I had told you that they are.
Then for calculation, it will be like problem, sir.
What happened?
So we start to calculate the problems of the tax of these individuals or the companies, and what we have to take, sir, like individual 4% and companies and cooperative 3%,
No.
like that, sir.
No. First thing is, whenever problems are asked in the exam, they ask you to calculate taxable income. Generally,
Yes,
they will
sir.
ask you to calculate taxable income. They are not asking you to calculate the tax. They are asking you to calculate taxable income.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
Yes,
even
sir.
if they ask you to compute tax liability, in such case, please consider education cess as 4%, irrespective of whether he is an
Okay,
individual,
sir.
irrespective of whether it's a company, a partnership firm, because that ruling will come out, and by the time you write that particular exam, the ruling would have already come out.
Okay, sir.
So please consider education cess as 4%, and then you can write down. In case if I get
Yes,
any
sir.
information, I will definitely let you know what should be the education cess that has to be considered.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right? Yeah. Anything else? If there is no doubts, we'll proceed. So we are going to discuss about the receipt of income and remittance of income. Please understand one thing. Okay. Uh, Receipt of income means you are earning something. Okay, you do some work, you do render some services, you supply some material, you sell some commodity, and when you do this particular activity, or this is called as an activity of commerce, when you do an activity of commerce and when you receive that particular income, that is what we call as receipt of income. On the other hand, remittance of income is a different concept. I'll just give you an example. Please understand this. Suppose you have 100 rupees on your in your left trouser pocket. Okay, you have 100 rupees in your left trouser pocket, and you remove that 100 rupees from your left trouser pocket and put it in your right trouser pocket. Does that mean that you have earned another 100 rupees?
No.
Okay, so what are you doing? You're just putting your hand in your pocket, removing that 100 rupees note from one pocket, and the same note you are putting it in another pocket. Does that mean that you are earning extra 100 rupees?
No, sir.
No, it
No,
doesn't.
sir.
That is what we call as remittance of income. Okay, you have already received the income. Okay, so from my account, the money that I receive from one bank account, if I remove that money from one bank account and put it in some other bank account, does this mean I have earned money in that particular account? No. So you need to understand what do you mean by receipt of income and what do you mean by remittance of income. Remittance of income is nothing but money changing hands. On the on the other hand, receipt of income means some activity of commerce has happened, and as a result, you have earned that particular income. This is what you need to understand, the basic concept of remittance and receipt. Any doubts in this? Okay, if there is no
No,
doubts, next point we will have to discuss is cash and kind. In some cases, or in most of the cases, income can be counted. Income has monetary value, income can be counted. But many a times it might so happen that you render some services, but instead of paying cash, you may get something in kind. I'll tell you an example. Sometimes you might have seen, okay, in your own house, some maid servants work in your house, right? So you are expected to pay them salary every month. It might so happen that sometimes, it might have happened in your experience also, sometimes you do not pay them cash, but you give them food grains worth the salary that they receive, or you may give them clothes equal to the salary that they receive. Now, in such cases, they are receiving monetary value in terms of kind. They are not receiving in hard cash, but they are receiving in kind. But in income tax, what we have to consider is if any person is paying or is receiving money in or receiving monetary value in terms of kind, in such case, income tax authorities will compute the monetary value of that. I'll give an example. I request everyone to please mute your mics. Say, for example, there is a person who is working for you, and in this particular cash crunch situation, you don't have salary, you don't have money to pay his salary. So, what do? You give him rice worth 50 kgs to him, right? You give him rice worth 50 kgs, you give him jawar worth 50 kgs, or you give them some, cereals worth 50 kgs or whatever. So what are you doing? You are compensating that particular person in terms of kind, in kind. You are compensating him in kind. But when it comes to income tax, what income tax authorities will do? They will ascertain what is the monetary value of that fish, 50 kgs of rice, the 50 kgs of wheat, and probably 25 kgs of cereals. They will ascertain what is the monetary value of it, and they will say that you have earned this much amount of income, you are liable to pay tax on that. Okay, so that is a difference between earning money in cash and earning money in kind. So you need to get that particular concept very, very clear. Next is receipt and accrual basis. That is nothing but, in income tax, one point that you have to consider is whatever is earlier, that is to be considered. Say, for example, I am rendering my services as a professor or as a teacher here in this particular college. So the college is liable to pay me salary at the end of the month. But from 1st September onwards, I am teaching. I have taught on 1st September, 2nd September, 3rd September. I have already earned salary for 1st, 2nd, 3rd up to today. I have already earned my salary. But have I received the salary for September? No. When will I receive the salary? At the end of that particular month. So income tax authorities are very, very clear. They say whether you have earned the salary or whether you have received the salary, whatever is earlier, that is what we are going to consider. So that is how income tax authorities work. So whatever is first, whether you have received the money in advance, then we will consider that money as an income. If you have earned the money, irrespective of whether you have received it or not, we will still consider that you have earned that particular money, you are liable to pay tax. That is what we understand by the word receipt versus accrual basis. Next is actual receipts and deemed receipts. Okay, deemed means you are expected to receive all those income, those we call it as deemed receipts. Yeah. So when it comes to deemed receipts, we'll discuss in detail what do you mean by actual receipts and what do you mean by deemed receipts. We'll just discuss it at a later stage because it has to go in depth, right? Up to this particular point, if you have any doubts, please let me know. I can clarify.
So,
Yes.
so in kind, you said about the taxation, how it is done?
What happened?
In kind, cash versus kind,
Yes.
the taxation part of kind.
Yeah.
So how it is gone through?
Okay. Suppose, Swapnil, your parents or your probably grandparents have made a will, that after their death, this particular property will go to Swapnil. Are you able to understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your grandparents or somebody in your relatives has made a will and saying that on after their death, you know, this particular property or these many assets that I own will be will not transferred, will be gifted. I'm using the word gifted. Will be gifted to Swapnil. Right? Has, okay, clear? Now, in this particular case, has Swapnil earned that money? Did you do something to earn that? No, you did not earn the money.
No.
Have you received it? Yes, you have received it.
Yes.
But can you put a monetary value to it? Suppose you get a house or you get a plot. Now, this plot has been transferred to your name. What will the income tax authority see? Now, income tax authorities will see that this property has come to you. Right? This property has come to you. And as a result, okay, your income is worth this much. Suppose the land of the price of that particular property, I am assuming, is say 10 lakh rupees, which means Swapnil has earned something worth 10 lakh rupees, right?
Okay.
Are you able to understand, Swapnil, what I'm trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
It is a gift deed that has happened to you from your parents or from your grandparents, okay? Which means now you are the owner of that particular property. And this property that you have got, you have not paid any money to that particular person. And as a result, you have indirectly got this particular property in terms of gift. So in other words, Swapnil has got an income worth 10 lakh rupees because 10 lakh rupees is the market price of that particular land. In other words, Swapnil's income is 10 lakh rupees. And on 10 lakh rupees, he is liable to pay tax. That is the meaning of the word kind. Now, don't take it in practical sense because transferring property that is immovable property or it comes under capital gain tax. So we shall see in data because there are a lot of provisions as far as capital gain tax is concerned. I hope you understand the meaning of this, the word kind, through this particular example.
Yes.
Okay. Any other?
Yes.
Any other thing? Okay. If there is nothing,
Sure.
okay, we'll move on to the next part. Okay. Can anyone solve this? It says Mr. A, an Indian citizen, received $4,000, okay, in out of a fixed deposit made by him in Bank of America, that is in US, which he later remitted to India at an exchange rate of $1 is equal to 40 rupees. That means he will send 1,60,000 rupees of money to India. Is this income taxed in India or US? Is my question. Can you answer this?
So in India.
Patient.
India, sir.
India.
Okay.
So because he is an Indian citizen, sir,
Okay.
it's taxable in India, sir.
Okay. Any other thing?
So that income is received.
Yes, go on, Rohin.
So that he's an Indian citizen, but he received $4,000.
Okay.
But he have received that amount in America, no, sir?
Okay.
By Bank of America. Then later he remitted to India an exchange rate of 40. Then remitted means that in $4,000 we have to. So we have to deduct the remitted amount of 40.
No, not 40. That is the exchange rate. So $4,000 into 40 rupees
Okay, sir.
comes 1,60,000 rupees.
1,60,000, yes, sir. Sir, as he is the resident of India, then the income is taxed in India, sir.
Okay. Let me explain. First of all, I have clearly mentioned that he is a citizen of India. I have never told you that he is a resident of India. Please understand. Getting the first point? I have told you that Mr.
Yes,
A
sir.
is an Indian citizen. I have never told you that he is an Indian resident. And we always put tax on the residential status of a person. We never put tax on the citizenship of a person. Please try to understand this. You're getting the point? So it is nowhere
Yes,
mentioned
sir.
to us that he is a resident in India, whether he is a non-resident in India, we don't know. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, it just says that he is an Indian resident. Need not be that he is an it is told to us that he is an Indian citizen. It is never told to us that he is an Indian resident. Please try to understand this. Point number one. Second, he has received $4,000 out of a fixed deposit made by him in Bank of America. So he has earned income outside India. He has received income outside India. And this particular income is nowhere related to business, and that business is not controlled also from India. Clear? So in other words, this particular person is a non-resident, okay, and his income which is earned outside India, received outside India, it is not related to business or profession which is controlled from India, which means it is a foreign income. And this particular person is a non-resident, so this income is not liable to be taxed in India. I told you mere remittance of money does not lead to income. That's the reason I told you, if you put your hand in your left trouser pocket and remove 100 rupees note and put it in your right pocket, does it mean to see that you have earned 100 rupees? No. Income tax is always charged on receipt or earning of an income. It is never, income tax is never put on remittance of income. So he might have sent this money to India, no doubt, but he is not liable to pay tax in India. On the other hand, he is liable to pay tax in US because it is earned in US and received in US. So naturally, he will be taxed in that particular country. He will never be taxed in India. Getting it? This is how you have to think of all these problems, in this particular sequence. First, determine the residential status. Second, whether it is an Indian income or foreign income. If it is a foreign income, check whether it is it from a business or is it from a profession which is controlled from India. If all these conditions are not satisfied, naturally that income becomes a foreign income and not liable to pay tax in India. So this is how the sequence of analysis of problems should go. Any doubts in this?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
So there's no information related to his residentship, sir. So how can we conclude that he's a non-resident?
There is no
Yes,
proof
sir.
also
Then
that
even they told Indian citizens, sir.
Sir, we conclude that it's a foreign income, agreed, sir. But how can we conclude that he's a non-resident?
we cannot conclude that he is a resident also, right?
Yes, I mean, we can't consider his residentship only, sir.
That's what. So when you cannot consider his when you cannot put a no, an identity to his residential status, best thing is you put him as a non-resident,
Okay, sir.
right? Because from the problem, it is not clear whether he is a resident, whether he is a non-resident, whether he is an ordinary resident. We do not know anything, right? And when things are not
Yes,
clear,
sir.
to be safe, and in the interest of that particular Mr. A, let us declare him as a non-resident so that he is not liable to pay tax in India. See, what happens is, if we consider him as a resident in India, he will have to pay tax in US also, because he has received and earned in America. So he will be taxed
Yes,
there
sir.
also, and he will be taxed here also, just because we are declaring him as a resident. So it will be double taxation. Double taxation is not allowed. Okay, duplication or
Yes, sir.
cascading effect of tax is never allowed as far as income tax is concerned. So you either pay tax in that particular country or you pay tax in this particular country, but you need not pay tax in both the countries. That is what it says. So to
Yes,
be on
sir.
the safer side, to be in the benefit of doubt should always go for the SSC, that is Mr. A. So we have to declare him that he is a non-resident in India, and this particular income is a foreign income, and therefore not liable to be taxed in India. Any doubts here?
No, sir. Done.
Clear? So think in this particular direction, think logically, go step by step, you will automatically get answers for such questions. Okay, so we'll move to the next part. Okay, these are some cases called as special cases under section 9. Okay, and we'll discuss these special cases in the next class. I think we have less than a minute left out. Not even, I think we have 2 minutes left out. So what I'll do is I'll just tell you what is business connection in India. Okay, so just go through this particular slide and then I will reconnect immediately once the meeting stops. Okay, till that time, just go through this particular slide. We'll continue with the same subject. Now, in all these 5 points that you can see on your screen, there is all these incomes or all these transfers or all these incomes that have been generated by various sources. They have something in common, and that is they are related to India. It might be because of the property that is available in India, the assets that are available in India, okay, the capital transfer that has happened in India, or if it is coming from a government source. Irrespective of what is that particular income, the income is arising in India, and therefore we have to say that it has business connections with India, and therefore it will be liable to be taxed in India. So that is what we have to understand. Clear? Last point is also very, very clear. It says dividend paid by an Indian company. So when an Indian company pays dividend, that means that company is in India only, right? It is registered in India. So if that particular company, okay, pays dividend, okay, in such case it will be still treated as a Indian income. Okay, I'll give you an
Sir,
example in the next session. Yeah, please.
sir, the dividend of Indian company, this is outside India. They have paid outside India. But I think according to section 22, subsection 1, sir, the dividend paid by the Indian company is not taken, sir. It is exempted, right, sir?
No, see, when it comes to exemption, okay, when it comes to exemption, we will have to give a provision for it. But still, while computing, we have to consider it. You don't pay tax on that
Oh,
particular thing.
oh.
Okay, I just
Sir, but while computing also, we don't take that amount, no, sir, dividend paid by the Indian company. Like that